Commander Zeth stood on the bridge of his massive warship and looked at the small blue planet floating in the darkness of space. Earth looked peaceful from this distance, with white clouds swirling over green and brown lands. He had seen many worlds like this one during his long career as a military leader. Some had forests, some had oceans, and some had cities that sparkled like tiny lights. All of them had fallen to his fleet within days. The bridge around him buzzed with quiet activity as his crew prepared for another conquest. Screens showed data about the planet below, while weapons officers checked their systems. Everything was ready for what should be a simple invasion. The humans of Earth had primitive technology compared to his ships. Their fastest rockets could barely reach their own moon, while his fleet could cross the galaxy in weeks. Zeth had conquered 47 worlds for the Dominion Empire. Each time, the pattern was the same. His ships would arrive in orbit, demand, surrender, and when the planet refused, his weapons would turn their cities to ash. The survivors would serve the Empire or die. It was efficient, and it was final. This mission should be no different. On the planet below, Dr. Lisa Carter sat in front of dozens of computer screens at the Deep Space Monitoring Station in Nevada. She had spent the last 15 years watching the skies for signs of life beyond Earth. Most nights, she saw nothing but distant stars and occasional space debris. Tonight was different. The screens showed objects that were too large and too organized to be natural. Lisa reached for her emergency communication device with shaking hands. She had practiced this moment 1,000 times, but never believed it would actually happen. The protocol was simple but terrifying. If she detected signs of alien spacecraft, she had direct access to the highest levels of government. Within minutes, her call reached the United Nations Emergency Council in New York. Secretary General Martinez listened to her report with growing concern. The objects on her screens were not small exploration vessels or research probes. They were enormous ships arranged in perfect military formation, each one larger than any city on Earth. President Jack Morrison received the call while having dinner with his family at the White House. He set down his fork and listened as his aide explained the situation. Alien warships had appeared in Earth's solar system and were moving toward the planet. The largest ship was positioned directly above North America. Jack had spent 4 years as president dealing with wars, natural disasters, and political crisis. Nothing had prepared him for this moment. He kissed his wife goodbye and walked to the Situation Room, where his top advisors were already gathering. The room's main screen showed a live feed from space telescopes. The alien ships looked like dark mountains floating against the stars. The ships were beautiful in a terrible way. Their hulls reflected starlight like black metal, and strange symbols glowed along their sides. Gun ports lined their surfaces like eyes, and each ship bristled with weapons that could destroy a continent. They moved in perfect formation, neither hurrying nor hesitating as they approached Earth. Defense Secretary Brown spread tactical reports across the conference table. Earth's most advanced fighter jets would be like paper airplanes against these vessels. Nuclear missiles might damage them, but the aliens could destroy every major city before Earth's weapons could even reach their targets. Any direct military response would be suicide. Commander Zeth watched his tactical displays as his fleet settled into orbit around Earth. His sensors detected the planet's military installations, their communication networks, and their population centers. Everything looked exactly as his intelligence reports had predicted. The humans had nuclear weapons, but their delivery systems were slow and predictable. They had aircraft, but nothing that could reach space. They had ground forces, but no way to attack ships in orbit. The only unusual reading came from his communication officer. Lieutenant Vex reported that human radio and television signals were increasing rather than decreasing. Most civilizations went silent when the Dominion fleet arrived, either from fear or because their governments shut down all communications. The humans seemed to be talking more, not less. Secretary of State Helen Price joined the emergency meeting, carrying briefing files about every first contact scenario Earth's best minds had ever imagined. Most of the plans involved either fighting or hiding. None of them seemed adequate for ships that could vaporize entire countries. Jack looked around the table at the faces of his advisors. Some showed fear, others showed anger, and a few showed the kind of cold determination that came before terrible decisions. General Hayes was already discussing nuclear strike options, while CIA Director Adams talked about evacuating key personnel to underground bunkers. The president listened to each report, but something felt wrong about all of their plans. Every option involved either running or fighting, and both approaches assumed the aliens were enemies who could not be reasoned with. Jack had spent his career believing that most conflicts could be resolved through communication and compromise. This situation seemed different, but perhaps not impossible. Commander Zeth authorized the transmission of his standard ultimatum. The message would broadcast simultaneously on every human communication frequency in their most common language. It was the same message he had sent to 47 other worlds, translated into local languages, but always carrying the same meaning. Surrender or face complete destruction. The transmission began at exactly noon Earth time. Television programs stopped mid-sentence and radio stations went silent as the alien message overrode every signal on the planet. The voice was deep and mechanical, speaking English with perfect pronunciation, but no emotion. People of Earth, you will surrender unconditionally within 72 hours, or your cities will burn. Prepare your leaders for transfer to Dominion. Custody. Prepare your population for relocation and service. Resistance will be met with total annihilation. This message will repeat until your compliance is confirmed. The message played again and again while billions of people around the world stopped what they were doing and listened. In homes and offices, in schools and hospitals, in cities and farms, humans heard the same words and tried to understand that their world had just changed forever. Jack Morrison stood in the Situation Room and felt the weight of every human life pressing down on his shoulders. In 72 hours, he would have to give an answer that would determine whether his species lived or died. Around the table, his advisors waited for orders that could save Earth or doom it. But deep in his mind, an idea was forming that none of his advisors had suggested. Instead of meeting the aliens with weapons or surrender, what if Earth met them with something completely unexpected? What if they met them with the one thing that made humans different from every other species? In the stories, what if they met them with kindness? The alien ultimatum played on every screen and radio for 3 hours before President Morrison made his decision. While other world leaders called emergency military meetings and activated their nuclear arsenals, Jack did something that surprised everyone in the Situation Room. He told General Hayes to stand down all military forces and ordered Secretary Price to prepare a very different kind of response. That the president's plan seemed impossible to his advisors. Instead of tanks and fighter jets, Earth would send cargo ships filled with food, medicine, and supplies. Instead of threats and demands, they would broadcast messages of welcome and friendship. Instead of preparing for war, they would prepare for the largest humanitarian mission in human history. Helen Price thought the president had lost his mind under pressure. She argued that the aliens had massive weapons and obvious hostile intent. They had demanded surrender and threatened genocide. Responding with kindness seemed like national suicide. But Jack remained firm in his decision. He believed that meeting violence with violence would only guarantee Earth's destruction. The orders went out within hours. Every cargo plane, transport, ship, and supply vessel on Earth received new instructions. Military transport aircraft were loaded not with weapons, but with medical supplies, fresh food, and water purification equipment. Cargo ships filled their holds with everything from antibiotics to children's toys. Even civilian airlines volunteered. Their planes for the mission. Captain Steve Rogers had spent 20 years flying cargo planes for the Air Force. He had delivered supplies to disaster zones, war zones, and remote military bases around the world. He had never been asked to fly a supply mission to an alien warship. His manifest included fresh fruits and vegetables, medical equipment, books translated into every human language, and thousands of handwritten letters from school children. The letters had started arriving at government offices within hours of the president's announcement. Children from every country wrote messages of welcome to the aliens. Some drew pictures of humans and aliens playing together. Others offered to share their favorite foods or teach alien children how to play Earth games. A few simply said they were sorry the aliens had traveled so far and hoped they were not too tired. Dr. Amy Johnson worked at MIT as a linguistics professor specializing in first contact scenarios. She had spent her career studying how different species might communicate, but she never expected to put her theories into practice. The government asked her to lead the human delegation that would approach the alien fleet. Her job was to make Earth's intentions clear through words and actions. Amy spent sleepless hours preparing for the most important conversation in human history. She studied the alien ultimatum for clues about their language patterns and cultural assumptions. The message was perfectly translated, but emotionally cold. It assumed that conquest was natural and resistance was futile. She wondered if the aliens had ever encountered a species that responded to threats with offers of friendship. Commander Zeph watched human activity through his ship's sensors with growing confusion. His intelligence officers reported massive movement of aircraft and ships, but none of them carried weapons. Instead, human cargo vessels were launching from every major spaceport and heading directly toward his fleet. The humans were either planning the most elaborate suicide attack in galactic history or something completely unprecedented. The first wave of human ships approached the Dominion fleet 18 hours after the ultimatum. Captain Rogers led 12 cargo planes in a loose formation as they climbed toward the alien flagship. His radio crackled with transmissions from air traffic control, but the messages were unlike anything he had heard in military communications. Instead of tactical updates and weapon status reports, he heard requests to confirm that he had enough fresh bread for the alien crew, and reminders to distribute the children's letters first. Lieutenant Vex monitored human communications from the alien bridge and reported increasingly strange developments to Commander Zeph. The approaching human vessels were broadcasting music instead of threats. Their pilots were discussing meal plans and medical supplies, rather than attack strategies. One pilot had asked his control tower if the aliens might enjoy chocolate, because his grandmother had sent extra cookies. The human ship stopped just outside weapons range and waited. Captain Rogers activated his communication system and broadcast on all frequencies. His message was simple and delivered in the calm voice of someone offering directions to lost travelers. He explained that Earth had prepared supplies for the alien crews and requested permission to approach. He added that the supplies included fresh food because traveling across space must be tiring and the aliens probably missed home cooking. Commander Zeth had fought battles across 47 star systems. He had faced desperate last stands, cunning ambushes, and suicidal counterattacks. He had never faced an enemy that offered to cook dinner for his crew. The situation fell outside every tactical manual and military protocol in the Dominion fleet. He could destroy the approaching ships with a single command, but something about their calm persistence made him hesitate. Dr. Johnson's voice joined the transmission from the lead science vessel. She spoke slowly and clearly, using simple words that universal translation systems could easily process. She welcomed the aliens to Earth's solar system and acknowledged that they had traveled far from home. She offered medical assistance, fresh food, and comfortable places to rest. She asked if the aliens would like to talk before making any final decisions about Earth's fate. The offer was so unexpected that it took Commander Zeth several minutes to respond. In his experience, primitive civilizations either cowered in terror or attacked with desperate fury when faced with superior force. They never offered room service and asked for conversation. He consulted his tactical computers, but found no protocols for handling humanitarian gestures from conquest targets. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, something remarkable was happening in cities around the world. Instead of panic and chaos, humans were organizing the largest cultural festival in history. Times Square filled with musicians playing songs from every nation, while volunteers prepared food for both humans and aliens. London's Trafalgar Square became a massive art exhibition, where children drew pictures of friendship between species. In Tokyo, engineers worked around the clock, building translation devices that could handle alien languages. News reporter Kate Williams broadcast live from Central Park, where 10,000 people had gathered for an impromptu concert. Musicians played everything from classical symphonies to folk songs, while families shared picnic meals and children played games. The scene looked more like a celebration than a response to potential extinction. Kate interviewed families who explained that they wanted the aliens to see the best of humanity rather than the worst. The festival atmosphere spread across every continent. In Rio, dancers performed in the streets, while artists painted murals, depicting humans and aliens working together. In Cairo, storytellers shared ancient tales of hospitality to strangers. In Sydney, chefs prepared meals representing every culture on Earth and announced that the aliens were welcome to join the feast. Commander Zeth received reports from his entire fleet describing similar scenes. Human cities were not preparing for war or evacuation. They were preparing for a party. His weapons officers reported no military targets presenting themselves. His intelligence officers reported no strategic installations going into defensive mode. Instead, humans everywhere seemed to be cooking, singing, and creating art. The commander authorized a limited response to the human approach. He allowed Captain Rogers and Dr. Johnson to dock with his flagship under heavy guard. Their ships could carry minimal crew and only the supplies they had declared. Any sign of weapons or hostile intent would result in immediate destruction. As the first human delegation prepared to board an alien warship, both species faced a moment it would change the galaxy forever. The aliens expected either surrender or rebellion. The humans offered neither. Instead, they offered something that the Dominion Empire had never encountered in centuries of conquest. They offered friendship to strangers who had come as enemies, and they did it with genuine smiles and home-cooked meals. Dyer Amy Johnson stepped through the airlock of the alien flagship with her heart pounding but her hands steady. The corridor beyond was larger than any hallway she had ever seen, with walls that seemed to absorb light and floors that felt warm. Beneath her feet, strange symbols glowed softly along the ceiling, and the air smelled like metal and something she could not identify. Behind her, Chef Maria Santos carried containers of fresh bread. Nurse Bill Thompson wheeled a medical kit, and engineer Paul Davis held a tablet full of technical gifts for their hosts. The aliens who escorted them were tall and thin with gray skin and large dark eyes. They wore uniforms that looked both military and ceremonial, with rank insignia that glowed like their wall symbols. They moved with careful precision and spoke in low voices, using words that the translation devices rendered as formal military commands. Amy noticed that they kept their distance from the human delegation, as if unsure whether the visitors were dangerous or simply unusual. Commander Zeth waited in a conference room that could have held 100 people. The table was made from some kind of dark crystal that reflected the ceiling lights like a calm lake. Amy approached with her hands visible and empty. Following first contact protocols, it seemed ridiculous given the circumstances. She was supposed to establish peaceful intent with beings who had threatened to destroy her entire planet. The commander was older than the other aliens Amy had seen, with scars on his neck and arms that suggested a long military career. His uniform carried more symbols, and his bearing showed the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. When he spoke, his voice was deep and measured, with the careful tone of someone choosing each word for maximum impact. Amy began with a greeting she had prepared during the flight to the alien ship. She thanked Commander Zeth for allowing the human delegation aboard and expressed Earth's hope that their species could find common ground. She explained that humans believed most conflicts arose from misunderstanding, and that communication could solve problems that weapons could only make worse. The commander listened without interruption, but Amy could see confusion in his large, dark eyes. He asked direct questions about Earth's military capabilities and strategic resources. He wanted to know why humans had sent food instead of fighters and doctors instead of soldiers. Amy realized that the aliens had no framework for understanding species that responded to threats with offers of friendship. Chef Santos opened her containers, and the smell of fresh bread filled the conference room. She had baked during the flight using portable equipment, and the loaves were still warm from the oven. She offered samples to Commander Zeth and his officers while explaining that food was how humans showed care for others. The aliens examined the bread carefully before tasting it, and Amy saw something change in their expressions when they realized it was genuinely delicious. Nurse Thompson asked permission to examine any crew members who might need medical attention. He explained that traveling across space for months or years often caused health problems that were easily treated with the right knowledge. The aliens exchanged glances before Commander Zeth admitted that several young crew members had been suffering from a mysterious illness that their medical officers could not identify. The first patient was a young alien barely out of adolescence who looked weak and tired. Bill examined him gently while asking questions about symptoms and diet. The medical scanners revealed nutritional deficiencies that were common among space travelers who relied on processed food for too long. The young alien needed fresh vitamins and minerals that were abundant in the supplies Earth had sent. Paul Davis showed the alien engineers his tablet full of technical innovations that Earth wanted to share freely. The designs included improved life support systems, more efficient food processors, and entertainment programs that could help with morale during long space voyages. He explained that humans believed technology should make life better for everyone, not just provide military advantages. Commander Zeth watched these interactions with growing bewilderment. His species had conquered dozens of worlds but had never encountered beings who offered gifts to their conquerors. The human medical officer was treating alien patients as carefully as he would treat his own people. The human engineer was sharing valuable technology without asking for anything in return. The human chef was preparing meals for aliens who had threatened her planet. The conference continued for hours as both species learned about each other. Amy discovered that the Dominion Empire had been expanding for thousands of years, absorbing other civilizations through conquest or threat of destruction. The aliens had incredible technology and vast resources, but they had forgotten how to create rather than take. Their society was organized around military efficiency and had little room for art, music, or the simple pleasures that humans considered essential. Commander Zeth learned that Earth had spent centuries fighting wars, but had gradually developed ways to resolve conflicts without destruction. Humans had created international laws, diplomatic protocols, and cultural exchanges that allowed different peoples to live together peacefully. They had problems and disagreements, but they had learned to solve them through communication rather than conquest. The breakthrough came when Bill Thompson finished treating the young alien patient. The teenager looked better within hours of receiving proper nutrition and vitamin supplements. His color improved, his energy returned, and he began asking questions about Earth in a language that sounded like music. Other young aliens requested similar treatment, and soon the medical bay was full of patients who were sick not from disease, but from the limited diet of military rations. Maria Santos prepared a full meal using ingredients from Earth and equipment from the alien ship. She created dishes that were nutritious for alien biology while still tasting like home cooking. The crew members who ate her food looked happier than Commander Zeth had seen them in months. Several asked for recipes and cooking lessons, which Maria provided with the enthusiasm of someone sharing her favorite hobby. Paul Davis worked with alien engineers to improve their ship systems using techniques that were simple but effective. He showed them how to create entertainment programs, improve air circulation, and design spaces that felt more comfortable for living beings rather than just military personnel. The alien engineers were brilliant, but had never considered that technology could serve emotional needs as well as practical ones. As the day progressed, word spread throughout the alien fleet about the unusual humans aboard the flagship. Other ship commanders requested permission to receive similar delegations. They had heard about the fresh food, medical treatment, and technical improvements, but more importantly, they had heard about beings who showed kindness to strangers without expecting anything in return. Commander Zeth found himself in an impossible situation. His orders were clear: accept Earth's surrender or destroy their civilization. But the humans had not surrendered, and destroying them now seemed not just wrong but wasteful. They possessed knowledge and attitudes that could benefit the entire Dominion fleet. They offered solutions to problems that military thinking had never addressed. The commander contacted his superior officers to report the unexpected developments. Admiral Korth at Fleet Headquarters listened to the report with growing anger. The Dominion had maintained power for millennia through swift, decisive conquest. Allowing one primitive planet to delay invasion through humanitarian gestures would set a dangerous precedent that could weaken the entire empire. But in the conference room of the flagship, something historic was happening. Aliens and humans sat around the crystal table sharing stories about their worlds and their hopes for the future. They discovered that despite their different appearances and technologies, both species wanted safety for their children, meaningful work, and connections with others who understood them. Amy realized that the aliens were not evil conquerors, but rather beings, trapped in a system that gave them no alternatives to violence. They had been soldiers for so long that they had forgotten. There were other ways to live. The humans could offer them something more valuable than surrender. They could offer them the chance to choose a different path. Commander Zeth faced the most difficult decision of his long career. He could follow orders and destroy a planet full of beings who had shown his people nothing but kindness. Or he could risk everything to protect a species that had reminded his own people what it meant to care for others. The choice would determine not just Earth's fate, but the future of two civilizations that had found an unexpected connection across the vast darkness of space. News of the human delegation's success spread through the Dominion fleet faster than official communications. Crew members who had lived their entire lives following military orders began questioning why they had never been offered fresh food, medical care, or simple kindness from their own commanders. Young aliens who had been raised to believe that conquest was the only path to glory started asking why humans seemed happier than Dominion citizens despite having less advanced technology. Captain Lucy Brown led the second wave of human supply. Ships to the destroyer Iron Talon. Her cargo included musical instruments, art supplies, and books along with the usual medical equipment and fresh food. The alien crew that met her ship seemed nervous and excited, as if they were doing something forbidden but irresistible. They had heard about the humans who treated aliens like honored guests rather than conquered enemies. The Iron Talon's crew was younger than the flagship personnel, and they responded to human kindness with an enthusiasm that surprised their own officers. When Dr. Jake Miller began treating crew members for the same nutritional deficiencies found on other ships, he discovered that many aliens had never received individual medical attention. The Dominion military treated soldiers as replaceable units rather than unique individuals with specific needs. Maria Santos had trained 3 more chefs who now worked on different alien vessels. They found that cooking for others created connections that transcended language barriers. Alien crew members gathered in the kitchens not just for better food, but for the conversations and laughter that happened while preparing meals together. Some aliens admitted they had never experienced anything like the warm community feeling of a shared kitchen. On Earth, the cultural festivals had evolved into permanent installations. Major cities created welcome centers where humans practiced alien languages and prepared gifts for visiting crews. Schools organized pen pal programs where children wrote letters to young aliens. Universities developed exchange programs that would allow students from both species to learn about each other's cultures and sciences. Reporter Kate Williams continued broadcasting from these human gatherings, and her interviews reached the alien fleet through intercepted transmissions. The aliens saw humans of all ages working together to create beauty and share knowledge. They watched children playing games that involved cooperation rather than competition. They observed families caring for elderly members and communities, supporting those who struggled with problems. Commander Zeth received increasingly urgent messages from Dominion headquarters demanding an explanation for the delayed conquest. Admiral Korth's latest transmission was filled with threats about court-martial proceedings and accusations of treason. The admiral could not understand why the most successful commander in the fleet was hesitating to destroy one primitive planet. But on the alien ships, a quiet revolution was taking place. Crew members who had spent decades following orders without question began making personal choices for the first time in their lives. They requested permission to visit Earth's surface, asked for extended medical treatment, and organized social activities that had nothing to do with military objectives. The rigid hierarchy that had governed their lives for centuries was slowly dissolving. Dr. Amy Johnson noticed the change during her daily meetings with Commander Zeth. The alien leader looked tired, but somehow younger than when they first met. He asked questions about human history, philosophy, and social organization. He wanted to understand how Earth had developed systems that allowed billions of AFYs, individuals, to live together without constant warfare. Amy explained that humans had learned cooperation through necessity. Earth's resources were limited, and no single group could survive alone for long. Different cultures had developed different solutions to common problems, and sharing those solutions made everyone stronger. Competition still existed, but it was balanced by recognition that some challenges required working together. The commander shared stories about Dominion history that revealed a different perspective on galactic conquest. His species had originally been peaceful explorers who shared knowledge and resources with other civilizations. But encounters with aggressive species had forced them to develop military capabilities for self-defense. Over time, those military structures had become the foundation of their entire society. Paul Davis worked with alien engineers throughout the fleet to implement improvements that made their ships more comfortable and efficient. But his most important contribution was showing them how to approach problems with creativity rather than just following established procedures. The aliens were incredibly intelligent, but their education had focused on following orders rather than thinking independently. The breakthrough came when young aliens began creating art inspired by their interactions with humans. Crew members who had never been allowed personal expression started drawing pictures, composing music, and writing poetry about their experiences. Their work was awkward and inexperienced, but it was genuinely their own creation, rather than something assigned by superior officers. Commander Zeph found one of these art pieces in his personal quarters. A young communications officer had left a drawing that showed aliens and humans working together to build something beautiful rather than destroying something that already existed. The image was simple but powerful, representing possibilities that the commander had never considered during his long military career. The crisis arrived when Admiral Korth dispatched a second fleet to investigate the delays and enforce the original invasion orders. The new ships emerged from hyperspace, with weapons powered and attack formations ready. Admiral Rex commanded this relief force with orders to destroy both Earth and any Dominion ships that had been compromised by human influence. Commander Zeph faced an impossible choice between loyalty to the empire that had shaped his entire life and protection of beings who had shown his people what kindness could accomplish. His own crew looked to him for leadership, but many of them had formed bonds with human friends and did not want to participate in genocide against people who had treated them like family. The first skirmish occurred when Admiral Rex demanded that all human personnel be transferred to his ships for interrogation and execution. Commander Zeth refused to comply, citing his authority as senior commander on the scene. The refusal represented the first direct challenge to Dominion orders in the fleet's history, and it split the alien forces into factions that supported different approaches to the Earth. Situation.Dr. Johnson worked frantically to prevent the conflict from escalating into full battle. She broadcast messages to both alien fleets explaining that humans wanted peace between all factions and offering to mediate the dispute. Her words were supported by actions as human ships moved to rescue alien crew members from damaged vessels. Regardless of which side they had supported, the sight of humans risking their lives to save aliens who might have killed them broke something fundamental in the Dominion military mindset. Even Admiral Rex's most loyal officers began questioning orders when they saw enemy medics treating their wounded with the same care they gave their own people. The humans demonstrated that strength could be used to protect rather than destroy, and that enemies could become allies through understanding rather than conquest. Captain Steve Rogers led a fleet of human rescue ships into the battle zone to evacuate wounded from both sides. His radio messages to the fighting aliens were calm and practical, offering medical assistance and safe harbor to anyone who needed help. He treated the space battle like a natural disaster, where the goal was saving lives rather than achieving victory. The turning point came when Hanne, Commander Zeth's ship, was severely damaged while protecting a human vessel from Admiral Rex's forces. As his crew worked to contain hull breaches and system failures, human engineers and medics boarded his ship to provide assistance. They worked alongside alien crew members to save the vessel and everyone aboard it, making no distinction between species when lives were at stake. Young aliens throughout both fleets watched humans risking everything to help people who had threatened their planet. The example of selfless courage inspired them to make their own choices about what kind of future they wanted to create. Many abandoned their posts to join the rescue efforts, choosing compassion over conquest for the first time. In their lives, Admiral Rex realized that his mission had already failed before the fighting began. The humans had not conquered his people through superior weapons or clever strategy. They had simply shown the aliens a better way to live, and once that knowledge existed, it could not be destroyed by military force. The choice between the old ways and the new had to be made by each individual, and increasingly, they were choosing the path that led toward friendship rather than fear. The battle above Earth lasted 3 days, but it was unlike any conflict in galactic history. Ships that fired weapons in the morning worked together on rescue missions in the afternoon. Alien crews, who had been ordered to fight each other instead, focused on protecting human vessels that moved freely between both fleets providing medical aid. The traditional rules of warfare broke down when soldiers from opposing sides discovered they cared more about saving lives than winning battles. Admiral Rex watched his carefully planned military operation dissolve into chaos as his own officers began questioning orders. When human medic Danny Clark boarded the Admiral's flagship to treat wounded aliens, several crew members refused to arrest him. They had heard stories about human kindness from survivors of the First Fleet, and they wanted to experience it for themselves rather than destroy it. The Admiral tried to maintain discipline through traditional military authority, but his threats carried no weight when his soldiers could see a better alternative. Young aliens who had grown up believing that strength meant the ability to destroy now watched humans demonstrate that true strength meant the ability to create, heal, and protect. The example was so powerful that it changed their fundamental understanding of what it meant to be strong. Commander Zeth used the chaos to implement his own desperate plan. He broadcast a message to every ship in both fleets, announcing his formal resignation from the Dominion military and his request for political asylum on Earth. He explained that he could no longer serve an empire that required him to destroy beings who had shown his people nothing but kindness and wisdom. The announcement sent shockwaves through the alien command structure. A commander with Zeth's record and reputation had never defected from the Dominion. His action gave other aliens permission to make their own choices about whether to follow orders that contradicted their conscience. Within hours, dozens of ships declared their intention to remain in Earth's solar system as independent vessels seeking refuge from an empire they no longer respected. Amy Johnson worked with President Morrison to develop an emergency diplomatic protocol for accepting alien refugees. Earth had never planned for the possibility of providing sanctuary to beings from across the galaxy, but the situation required immediate action. The President authorized the construction of temporary housing stations in orbit around Earth where aliens could live while deciding their future. Maria Santos organized cooking classes that brought together humans and aliens in ways that formal diplomacy could never achieve. The shared activity of preparing meals created bonds that transcended species differences. Aliens who had never experienced family relationships found themselves adopted into human communities that welcomed them as honored guests rather than dangerous strangers. Engineer Paul Davis led construction teams that included both humans and aliens, working together to build the orbital stations. The aliens contributed advanced technology, while humans provided organizational skills and creative problem-solving approaches. The collaboration produced living spaces that were more comfortable and efficient than anything either species had created alone. Admiral Rex faced a complete breakdown of military order as more ships abandoned his fleet to join the refugees. His remaining forces were not enough to destroy Earth, and his authority had evaporated when his soldiers chose conscience over obedience. He contacted Dominion headquarters to report the failure of his mission, but the response was swift and brutal. The Empire declared him and all defecting forces to be traitors subject to immediate execution. A declaration forced Admiral Rex to make his own impossible choice. He could return to face court-martial and execution, or he could follow the example set by Commander Zeth and request asylum among the people he had been sent to destroy. The decision was made easier when human doctors saved the life of his chief medical officer, who had been critically injured during the fighting. Commander Zeth, now calling himself simply Zeth, worked with Dr. Johnson to establish formal diplomatic relations between Earth and the refugee aliens. They created agreements that allowed the aliens to contribute their knowledge and skills to human society, while maintaining their own cultural identity. The arrangements were unlike anything in galactic history because they were based on mutual respect rather than conquest or submission. The first Galactic Friendship Festival took place 6 months after the alien fleet first appeared in Earth's Orbit. Central Park was transformed into a celebration that included beings from dozens of worlds who had joined the refugee community. Former weapons officers taught human children about alien technology, while human artists worked with alien engineers to create sculptures that could only exist in the reduced gravity of orbital stations. Kate Williams interviewed festival participants for a documentary that would eventually reach civilizations throughout the galaxy. The stories she collected revealed how first contact had changed both species in ways that no one had anticipated. Humans learned about technologies and perspectives that expanded their understanding of the universe. Aliens learned about compassion and creativity that had been missing from their lives for generations. Young aliens who had grown up in military hierarchies experienced childhood for the first time as they played with human children who taught them games based on cooperation rather than competition. Adult aliens discovered artistic expression, romantic relationships, and the simple pleasure of choosing their own daily activities. Many reported feeling more alive and happy than they had ever been during their military service. The changes were not limited to individuals. Entire ship crews voted to convert their warships into research vessels, medical ships, and cultural exchange platforms. Weapon systems were replaced with scientific equipment, laboratories, and workshops where aliens and humans could work together on projects that benefited both species. Dr. Jake Miller established the first interspecies medical center where human and alien doctors shared knowledge about treating patients from different biological backgrounds. The collaboration led to breakthroughs in medicine that helped both species live longer and healthier lives. Diseases that had plagued each species for centuries were cured using techniques learned from the other. President Morrison worked with Zeth to create the Interstellar Diplomatic Corps, an organization dedicated to resolving conflicts between civilizations through communication rather than warfare. They sent teams throughout the galaxy to share the lessons learned from Earth's first contact experience. Many worlds that had been locked in endless cycles of violence found peaceful solutions when they learned about alternatives to military conquest. The transformation was not complete or perfect. Some aliens chose to return to the Dominion despite the risks, and some humans remained suspicious of their new neighbors. Cultural misunderstandings created occasional tensions, and practical problems required constant negotiation and compromise. But the overall success of the integration proved that different species could live together peacefully when they focused on shared values rather than surface differences. 1 year after the first alien ships appeared in Earth's orbit, the space around the planet bustled with activity that no science fiction writer had ever imagined. Former warships served as floating cities, where humans and aliens worked together on projects ranging from artistic collaborations to scientific research. Children who had been born on different worlds played together in orbital playgrounds while their parents built a society that neither species could have created alone. The memorial ceremony marked the anniversary of first contact with a celebration of how two civilizations had chosen friendship over fear. The monument erected in Central Park carried a simple inscription suggested by a young alien who had learned to write in English. They came with warships, we met them with a smile, and together we built something better than either could imagine. Alone. Dr. Amy Johnson concluded her speech at the ceremony with words that would be remembered throughout the galaxy. We learned that the strongest weapon is an open hand, and the greatest victory is making an enemy into a friend. The universe is vast and full of wonders, but the most amazing discovery is that kindness is a universal language that every species can understand. The crowd that heard those words included beings from dozens of worlds who had come to Earth, seeking the same acceptance and opportunity for peaceful coexistence that the first alien refugees had found. The example of successful integration attracted others who were tired of endless warfare and wanted to build something better for their children. As the ceremony ended and beings from across the galaxy returned to their homes and work. Earth stood as proof that the future could be different from the past. A planet that had once seemed doomed to destruction had become a beacon of hope for civilizations throughout the universe, showing that even the most ancient conflicts could be resolved. When people chose understanding over fear and cooperation over conquest,